Dr. Dennis MacDonald, we've journeyed from the Eleusinian, what is it called? The Eleusinian fields, and through Plato, and from Homer to Plato down into the Christian era. We're beginning to get there. You did mention Virgil as well, Aeneid. You're going to take us into Christian literature and hell, Hades, and have at it.
I love Christian apocryphal Acts of Apostles, and I've been responsible for editing and interpreting some of these texts. And in many of them, we have tours of hell. And probably my favorite is the Acts of Andrew, where Andrew sends cannibals into Hades and then has them record the torments that they saw there, and then come back up out of the water and report what they saw and convert. And so the rest of the cannibals on the island of Myrmidonia become Christians. Now, this is similar to the of Plato, who goes to the Netherworld, comes back and reports what he has seen, and it presumably changes his life forever because he becomes more virtuous. And that was the point for Plato. But now you have 14 cannibals coming out of the abyss and converting because of what they saw. This became scandalous for the Orthodox, not because it was a tour of hell, but because Manichaeans were using it to justify reincarnation. Because if people can come back from hell and have a life on earth again, that sounds too much like a Platonic reincarnation to them. And in fact, we know that according to the opponents, Manichaeans used both Plato and the Acts of Andrew to support reincarnation. It's very, very fascinating. Now, in the apocalypses of Peter and Paul, we have the apostles also visiting the Netherworld, and there the torments are graphic and they are trivial. So people go to hell because they didn't attend church on a holiday, or they stinted on the tithe. And so it's not just sexual sins. Oh, by the way, if you have a sexual sin, you're hung by the offending body part. Thank you very much. And so on, so that you get this lurid attitude toward hell. And in this case, I think the authors wanted people to take seriously the torments of hell. They knew they were writing fiction, but they thought the fiction said something about reality, and they were trying to get people to toe the line. And so these are just outrageous, the tours of hell. One of my favorite ones, though, is the so-called Descensus Christi, the descent of Jesus into the Netherworld, or the harrowing of hell. As far as I know, the best version we have of it is in Latin. It was part of the Acts of Pilate, or the Gospel of Nicodemus. The titles are tricky. But I do understand that there's a Greek text of the Descensus Christi that I haven't been able to get easily my hands on. But the story is this. Jesus dies, and even in the New Testament, Jesus preaches to those who are in Hades, or preaches to the dead. So Satan is in Hades, and Satan and Hades are responsible for the dead, but the dead include the righteous. David is there, Adam is there, Enoch is there, and so they're in the Netherworld along with the wicked. And Jesus comes as the Lord of glory and cites the psalm, "Open your gates and let in the King of glory." So Jesus, as the King of glory, comes through, before his own resurrection, by the way. And he confronts Satan, and Adam gives a speech, Enoch gives a speech, David gives a speech, and they're so grateful that their Lord has finally come to liberate them. And so Jesus takes all of the dead out of Hades, and he orders Hades, the god, to bind Satan and to keep him in hell forever. Now, here's the end. This is why the story is important. There is a hell, and the only resident of it is Satan.
In this
account. It's a form of Christian universalism. Everybody is coming to paradise. So now you have a tour of hell that's not a tour of hell. It closes the door on hell. And so everybody comes into paradise. And we have a Christian tradition that is universalistic. That is, everybody is going to have some kind of post-mortem bliss. It's an amazing story, and it's very poorly known in theological circles, but that seems to be what's going on, and I love that story. That wasn't going to work for Dante. Dante loved hell. You have the Divine Trilogy, and he's less interested in paradise and purgatory than he is in the Inferno. And in the Inferno, there are, I don't know how many, 10 or 12 different layers of hell. And they all get worse until you get to the worst. And it includes church officials, it includes government officials, it includes philanderers, it includes, so he just piles into hell all the people he doesn't like. And there's no getting out of there. I mean, this is eternal, and it's a way of him articulating his bad boys and to get rid of them. Now, he knows he's writing fiction, of course, and the readers know that the Italian readers of the time know that this is really a political statement. It tells you how he feels about the church or about Roman politics or about Germans and so on. I mean, it's really quite amazing. Now, another thing that happens around the same time, but earlier and earlier than Dante, is that artists loved to depict hell. And so in the book that you were talking about, where you had these lurid descriptions of hell and torments, artists loved it because it was one of the few chances for them to depict nudes. So it's a kind of Christian pornography to have people dangling from their penises or their boobs, or to be they don't have clothes on. And so now artists are able to have Christian pornography, and you can see it in churches throughout Europe. It's really a very interesting piece of the Christian tradition that we usually don't think about, that you have, the church sponsoring a kind of pornography to scare people out of to be righteous and to be faithful to the church for fear of hell. And I'm afraid that Christian fundamentalism is still doing that. I think fear of hell in modern Christian preaching is often pornographic. And it's not, that's metaphorical. But if I believed in hell, I'd want to put people who believe in hell there. So, that's my purgatory or Inferno. There was a Pew study done of people who had attitudes towards heaven and hell from various religious groups, and not just Christian groups. But there's one thing very interesting about liberal Christians. Liberal Christians did not believe in heaven as a rule, but a near half of them believed in hell. because it's so much more fun to talk about how God is going to punish your enemies and the people who don't believe in your attitudes towards social justice or whatever. So I started out with the jokes because I wanted people to know that is the residue of mythologizing heaven and hell for different kinds of purposes of entertainment or morality or social identity or whatever. But it is tragic that your mother and others believe there is such a hell and are filled with such torment. So the story of the Lazarus and Dives ought not to make you fear hell. It ought to make you help the poor. That's the point. The point of the myth of ought not to be that there is 1,000-year punishment for the unrighteous and 1,000 years of bliss for the righteous until there's a reincarnation and so on. That's not the point. The point is to be righteous and to be just and faithful to family or your country or whatever your values are. So we need to demythologize heaven and hell permanently. And we have to live our lives as righteously as we can without fear. The fear we should have is the harm we're going to do others or to ourselves. That's the fear that should keep us awake, but not fear of hell.
Yeah, I think Mom sometimes might doubt it. Can't read her mind, but she wrestles with it because she has the Bible as the foundation. It sounds like it's political. It serves a purpose to try and do the things that they're doing through time. I want to bring up Zoroastrianism for a second here as well, because they have the knife of lie. I think it is. It's like a thin, sharp knife edge that you walk on, and if you fall off into the fire, into the pit down below, if you're righteous, it'll be like taking a bath in warm milk. But if you're unrighteous, it's going to burn away. And so they have like a story here within the Persian Zoroastrian myth of hell. Yeah, I just didn't know. I know you're big on the Greek world, but we mentioned Egyptian just as a source. They have a lake of fire. And the book of Revelation actually has an interesting repetition from that Egyptian mythos with the lake of fire and but it also has Hades. So it has a definite Greco-Roman mythology has encompassed the world, Hellenism. But this guy is using strange language you do find in ancient Egyptian lore, which Egyptian religions still continue down into these periods.
Well, methodologically, that's an important distinction. That is, you're interested in mythology and the history of religion. I'm interested in the intertextuality of the West, where we know that Plato is interacting with Homer. We know Virgil is imitating both Plato and Homer. We know that early Christians like Luke is interested in imitating Homer and to revise it. And the Christian Apocrypha are going their own way, but they probably are imitating each other. So my methodology is more mimetic, which means that it's more kind of stovepipe and culture specific. What you're arguing for is more like what Joseph Campbell would argue for. That is the universality of mythologies and their psychological and sociological functions, which is also very important. And the two methodologies can dovetail. So I don't think it's an either or. I would be surprised if there were major cultures that did not have an equivalent to hell. Well, Muslims do.
Yeah, and I'd say a lot of that might be adapted because they're in the region squashed between both a Christian empire ran by Heraclius when the 7th century is on the rise, and the Persian Empire, which is a lot of Christians and Zoroastrians. So, and there's probably some others, but mainly they both have a hell myth. And then what's interesting about this too, that you bring up, I'm not going to deny that there might even be a possible mimetic connection to something Egyptian here in Revelation, because
fair enough.
He not only mentions the lake of fire, but he talks about second death. And this is found in Egyptian mythology as well. And I always thought about, like, oh, second death, that's kind of interesting. So people believed that when you die, like, it's not over, but then I guess there's like another death that you can reach in some myth. And so my ultimate purpose in this is to get people who are terrified, obviously, to try and understand you are literally trying to combat just myth. These are stories crafted to create the fear of how we should act or how we should be. But, you know, when you did your joke at the beginning of the last video, I thought it was interesting because I almost wanted to cut in and go, the myths that they're writing are just as true as the story you just told. Like, you know, and there's a sense of ease and comfort to laugh at the jokes that you brought up, whether it be hell, oh, it was all works, you know, come on. You could technically believe that joke and be, oh, that's true. Or you can go, well, I know that they wrote that, you know, or he made that up, or that's a joke he learned.
Well, and that particular joke means that you can't count on grace. You have to do good works. So, you know, it has a moral punch as well. I don't think the first one about Pinocchio does. It's just a fun joke. But it shows that there's a lot more energy in the religious imagination about hell than there is about bliss in heaven. And I just think it becomes an opportunity, like these pornographic medieval artists who are they're writing these awful pictures about judgment. And it's a kind of literary version of that pornography to dwell so much on the torments of the unrighteous.